The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Champions, our game of the week, discuss staying in tune with casual gamers in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five well-regarded misses. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, the esteemed Dr. Michael McCabe. How's
What's
it going
on, Doug? How are you?
I am fantastic. I feel like summer is flying by. And
It always does. It's my favorite season by far. I love it.
Things are getting filled up. I can't. We got local parades that we're going to, and the time for gaming has just evaporated. But I know you had some family trips, so you probably got a ton of stuff to the table, right?
Not gaming, no. I actually got a little dose of sun poisoning because there was a nice little watering hole with a zip line, and I was kind of the crazy, over-enthusiastic uncle that babysat other people's kids. It's all good. It's all good. They're my nieces and nephews by marriage. No. But I was outside, man, all weekend. We're going to do some gaming coming up, I hope. We have other family stuff in the next few weeks. But yeah, a lot of outside time, a lot of time by the water with kids, which is also good. I do have something awesome, though, on that note, if that's okay.
Sure. Fire away.
I borrowed from the Doug Kotecki playbook of how to travel with games. And I'm bringing a prop. This is in the What's Awesome with Gaming. To our listeners that are watching on YouTube, I'm holding up a standard quiver here. And in that quiver, I have approximately a dozen games. Now, Mr. Efficiency, my co-host, is scoffing because he'll get 21 to 27 games in his quiver, same size.
Yeah.
But, you know, you and I didn't think anything of it. I've had it for a couple of years. We travel with it. But one of my family members saw it, and his jaw just dropped. And he, you know, they have Catan, they have Ticket to Ride, they play games, and he just, what is that? So it's called a quiver. And even my wife was talking about, yeah, it's really handy. You can travel, get a lot of games out easily. You know, like I keep For Sale in the box in there, and we have Deducto and Love Letter and Oanami, Birds of a Feather, No Thanks, Llama, Take 5, all sorts of games in there. And immediately he said, I'm getting one for my brother. I'm getting one for my dad. Christmas is taken care of. And it's just cool when you see things like that, you know, where somebody sees something for the first time and their mind is blown. And I know I've had at least a half dozen experiences like that with you, that you brought me into that part of the hobby. Yeah. So it was nice to spread the enthusiasm, joy, virus of the hobby. Yeah. So that was cool.
If only you had taken the Uwe Rosenberg tile placement efficiency, you could pack that efficiency course. You could pack that a little bit better.
Well, or W. Eric Martin and cut my boxes in half, right? I could probably figure out a way to get Return to Dark Tower into the quiver. If only
there you go.
We're a little bit more ruthless with my boxes.
The magnetic miniature version of Return to Dark Tower.
Yeah, there you
Travel
go.
version.
So that was cool. It was just cool to see somebody light up when I least expected it, you know?
Yeah.
Playing a little Deducto, and people were impressed with that, so.
All right, well, we got a little bit of follow-up. We were kind of worried last week when we recorded our episode that the Spiel des Jahres would be nominated or announced before the episode aired, because we recorded earlier than usual last week.
And we didn't really get worried until after we finished recording, which is then when I think we both got real worried.
Yeah, this is going to be a disaster. And it worked out perfectly. I called up Germany, let them know what was going on, and they waited until Sunday to announce the winners. So the winners are, for the Spiel des Jahres, they disagree with me as far as what a family game is.
And agreed with me.
That Sky Team was the winner of the Spiel des Jahres. And I think And I think that one is, I'm certainly very interested to play it, but I think it has a lot to do with the innovation and the gameplay of it that was just kind of too remarkable to ignore, right? And there's no other place that you're going to put it because it's probably not heavy enough to be a Kennerspiel. Close, probably on that line.
Well, and we're doing a little bit of recap from last week and going on, and people can tell Doug and I are arguing a point here, so we're just going to continue on our own show for a little bit. But think how many times you play a game with just one other person in your family. And so I also think it's a little bit of a statement, and it does open the door for 2-player only games in that category going forward. They've decided. It's a German award. They've decided.
I can't say I disagree with it. I was surprised when it was announced. Not surprised actually that it won based on the other 2 games that were in there. So let me preface it by saying that it's not that I disagree with it or I think it's a terrible choice. I was surprised that it even entered the conversation in the first place.
Hot take. I disagree with a game I've never played.
And exactly. It was based entirely on the player count, nothing to do with the game at all. So the Kennerspiel, which is the connoisseur game of the year, that went to Daybreak from Matt Leacock. And is there another designer with that one?
Yeah, there's a co-designer on that one. I should have the name up in front of me, but I don't. I haven't played that one yet.
And then the Kinderspiel, which is a children's game of the year, is Die Magician Schlussel, the Magic Keys. And we're back to my normal German pronunciation. Die Magician.
We just went down by a whole point on our Apple ratings, Doug.
I apologize.
Suddenly 18 Deutschlanders just got on there and gave us 1 stars.
That's offensive. And I used to broadcast basketball, folks. So, and I was actually
in Wisconsin, where there's a lot of German names.
I know, but I was the best one there, getting those things out. So you win some, you lose some. So that is who won the Spiel des Jahres. Moving on to, do you have any other follow-up?
I just wanted to congratulate Keith Matega for running a successful Kickstarter. Emerald Skulls just closed, and I received notification that it was funded. So again, congratulations. Keith was on a few weeks back in an episode, in an interview, and he talked at length about that game. So just a quick follow-up that Thunderworks is a local company to us. We had them on the show, and he did a great deep dive into the logistics behind not just running a Kickstarter, but really being a publisher and a designer. Yeah. And so that was all the way back in episode 173. So we had him on 7 episodes ago. If you missed it, or if you're just a new listener, you could go back and hear about that one. So I saw that campaign was closing and reminded me to follow up with folks on it.
All right. Well, moving on to some things that are awesome. And this is not something that we usually do, but we had to highlight this and give a shout out to dear listener Nicole, who sent in some awesome gifts to us. In fact, my wife commented that, Nicole, you may be a better gift giver than she is for me. And are we sharing what we got, or just?
Yeah, I think so, because it's unique to us, and it just. Our salaries are not large here at the Game Schooler podcast related.
We're actually paying to run this.
Big time, right? This is our disposable income. And once in a while, if we're thinking like, man, why do we do this? You just get a boost. And Doug said he had surprises for me when I got over to headquarters. And I thought, oh, what is it? Nah, I'm not going to tell you on the phone. I'm going to wait till you get here. And man, when we got there, I got a little emotional with the gift. Here it was, packaged. And Doug, I'll turn it over to you if you want to jump in here. Or
yeah, there was just a nice note in there, and my kids were hopping all over the place. They just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And she sent me a copy of Star Wars Dark Side Rising, which is a European exclusive of a game I really like, that there is a Marvel version and a Harry Potter version. And at some point on the show, I must have mentioned that there was this other version, and I wish we had access to it in the U.S. And it's just not available based on the licensing right. The ops produced it and it came out in Europe, but not in the U.S. And so, talk about I don't want to say a Grail game, but a game that was on my radar the same way that Comic Hunters is of the game that's now getting published in the U.S., but from Brazil. Like, oh, if I could just get my hands on that sometime. Never assuming that it would come to the U.S. So, Nicole, thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
And I got a copy of Zuli, which is a game, published in the UK by a designer, Chris Prescott. Not super readily available over here. At least I hadn't seen it, and got a lot of buzz at the UK Games Expo in 2022 with a nice little promotional card. And then when I looked at the rules and looked at the game, it's like, this is going to be perfect for my family. Sushi Go, but meaner. I absolutely love this. I'm going to love playing this weekend, this upcoming weekend with my nieces and nephews, and little payback for all that getting splashed in the water this past week. I'm going to take it out on them where you start out with a zoo and you place your animals in there and you can steal animals from other folks. So looks like a game that's going to fit right into our family collection, and just the thoughtfulness behind it really, really makes a big difference. We're not asking people to run out and get us gifts, but we were at a trade show a little while back, and a guy came up to us and just said, "Hey, really love the podcast." And it was one of those things where it kind of startled me a little bit, like, whoa, we've got a regular listener here. And those are the things that when they happen, they're just so nice. We appreciate it. We love to play games. We love to review games. We love to talk about games, and we're glad that people are listening.
Yeah, and how do you get a gamer with over 500 games, a game that they don't have? Miracle. Nice work, Nicole.
Yeah. And thank you for the card and the gifts. It was very, very appreciated.
Yep, and again, like Michael said, this is not a solicitation to acquire more gifts. Please, that's not the point. We just wanted to highlight an awesome act of kindness.
And it shocked our families a little bit too, I think.
Yeah.
I just want to say that.
Yeah, your dad's a big deal, guys.
No, but they sent it from where? Oh, that's really cool, Dad. Like that was
yeah.
I think anytime somebody does something thoughtful and takes time, there's good ripples that happen with that. And so this was one of those examples.
All right. Well, I want to talk about a game that, and like I said, it's been a busy summer. Haven't had a ton of time to game, but I did get to play some games with my 6-year-old, and we played a game of Life Junior. And it's one that I basically acquired by accident. It's not a game that I sought out purposely. And and this is something that we'll talk about probably later in the episode when we talk about casual gamers and whether you're losing touch with them and things like that. But we played this game. My daughter had a blast. And it occurred to me that the hobby in general kind of looks their nose down at mass market games, and certainly the idea of like, oh, you're going to play Life Junior, you should be pulling out a Haba game or a Blue Orange game or the designer kids games type of thing, something that won the Spiel des Jahres.
What one won the Spiel this year, Doug? What was that called?
The Magic Keys.
Okay.
The Magic Keys. And so as I got done, my daughter ran off. She crushed me, and she ran off. I was putting the game away, and I was just kind of marveling at, here I am playing this mass market game. I had fun. My daughter had fun. It was quick, but then there were points in the game where I was realizing, okay, you're using the spinner, and she's counting out the spaces, and then at the end of the game, counting out money. And it's like, those are super simple skills that we take for granted, of just like, oh, of course you spun a 5 and you moved 5 spaces. But for somebody that, I've been gaming with, since she was 3 or 4, and that fine motor of picking up the piece and moving it, but then picking up the piece and counting the spaces out and not missing spaces or jumping or double counting, all the stuff that little kids do when they're learning those things. And I was like, there's value in this game that gets discounted because it was at Walmart or it was at Target or it's, Life, that's a classic game type of thing. And no, do I want to play that game every day? Do I want to play Candyland with an 8-year-old? No, I don't. But for that age group of 3 to 6, those games work on those basic levels, and it's not a time to be teaching. Like, those are the times where you're teaching basic direction following and rules, counting in colors.
Yeah, it might not be to the complexity of some other children's games and even children's games that are in the hobby. But what those mass market games get done right, they teach people how to take a turn.
Yeah.
And that in itself can be very freeing. And the turn isn't programmed. They're not pounding on a tablet or moving a joystick to manipulate an object. They're having to think. They're having to use their metacognitive powers in order to move forward. And I do think some of those games, and I haven't played Life Junior, so I can't speak for it specifically, but I know that, you've talked about some other mass market games recently too that seem to really work well for your 6-year-old kiddo. And I think it's great that you're highlighting.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, how brutal would it be of me as a father or as a gamer, using air quotes, a gamer, to be like, Molly, we are not playing that hot garbage because that came from a shelf on Walmart. This is much too lowbrow of a game for us. We need to...
If you notice, it's ranked 4.2 on Board Game Geek, and I helped to contribute that by giving it a 1.
Yeah, it makes me actually want to look it up right now to see what it is.
Did you just play 2-player? Did one of the older kiddos jump in, or your wife?
We played it in the past.
So 2 players can technically be a family game once in a while, huh?
I don't consider that my family playing. I consider me and the child playing, Michael.
Okay, I digress.
Don't you?
For now.
Don't you push back at me?
Professional stall. What's it ranked?
I don't know. I don't know how it's listed in here. What's awesome with you, Michael? I'll get back. Maybe I'll get back to it. Good gosh.
Well, I think preparing to cover Gen Con has been a lot of fun too, and I was I'm going to sound like an old guy, but I was working on a tweet here where I wanted to. You just recently put out an awesome review video for Point Salad, and those overview videos that you've been putting out on YouTube, I think, are great, and they actually. Because I have so many burner accounts where I like them from, they tend to pop into our family feeds. Yeah, you're welcome. They tend to pop into our family feeds, and the kids like to watch them as well. But I was just thinking about, look, Point Salad is a game that we still play, and that was a gem from 2019. And here, 5 years later, we're getting ready to go cover Gen Con, and how many of those games that are going to be there this year could still be that gem for another podcast or even our podcast 5 years from now. So I don't know, just been doing some reflecting this time of year on the hobby and the hype and the hotness, but also some of those gems.
Yeah. Michael, you are 100% correct. It is a 4.2 rank. So, and that is ranked 26,310 overall with a weight of 1.00. So, whatever, it works. What else is going on? Some of the games on my shelf. We have The Initiative, which is kind of a cooperative campaign-style game. I don't know how much longer that's going to stick around on my shelf. I played the first...
Hold on, back up. You jumped way too deep into that.
Yeah.
If we have new listeners, tell them about this part of the segment. You just hopped from Life Junior to your shelf.
Yeah.
So just briefly tell folks about your shelf.
My shelf, we are going through a series of my Calyx shelves and what is on those shelves and just highlighting what is in my collection, what is stuck around. And those games cannot be moved until we talk about them. And so that's what we're doing. And on this shelf, we've got Life Junior, Life Express. No, I'm kidding. The first one is The Initiative, which is a cooperative game that came out, I believe, from Unexpected Games, I think is the publisher. And it's a kind of a cooperative campaign story style game. And I played through the first couple of ones, but we have not gotten back to it. And I don't know that we will get back to it. So it's one of those that I don't know if the hooks were strong enough. So I don't know how much longer that one will be around, but we'll see. Next one has been is one of the longest games I've owned, and it's one of the meanest games I own. And I'm surprised Michael and I haven't played this together. That is Survive Escape from Atlantis. Do you know anything about this game, Michael?
I know a little bit about the game. I'm also surprised we haven't played that together yet.
So in Survive Escape from Atlantis, you have your meeples on an island that is a volcano that is slowly exploding and sinking into the sea. You are then trying to get your meeples onto boats to get them to safe islands. The trick of the game is that your meeples have numbers at the bottom of how valuable they are, or a point value. And so you're trying to get those islands get those meeples to the islands to safety, and whoever gets the most valuable people to the island wins. But there are sharks and sea creatures, and it's like, sorry, I took this tile away, and now your guy is swimming in the ocean, and I'm gonna knock over this boat with with 3 of your guys on it, with this sea monster here. So now they're all red meat in the ocean for them to get swallowed. So that is very mean, but fun if you take it with the right attitude. The next game is Adventureland, which we talked about in episode 33, an awesome game from Haba. Speaking of Spiel des Jahres winners, the next one is Karuba, which we talked about in episode 48. And the last one we haven't talked about. I think we've talked about it on the periphery, but certainly not a game of the week, and that probably has more to do with availability than anything, and that's Stockpile, which I think is my all-time favorite stock game that I feel gives me everything that I want out of a stock game of manipulating markets and buying high and selling low and kind of the volatility of the real market. So
yeah, it came in on a High Five episode back in 75.
Sure.
And I recall that because I don't think I had played it yet, or else I had just played it. But I definitely got the bug for that game after playing it. And also a Madison, Wisconsin designer.
Yeah.
From Nouveau Games. That's a phenomenal game.
So that's it for me. Anything else awesome for you, Michael?
That's a good little shelf of games, Doug. No, I'm ready to get into the game of the week.
All right. Just a reminder to check out the Discord server. You can sign up for that by going to gameschooler.com/Discord. And if you ever have a question on things, just a great forum to put those things out there, whether it's, hey, has anybody tried this game? Has anybody run into this problem with something, or things like that? And a lot of School of Gaming segments come from those discussions on there, and we can kind of push them out to a broader audience. But a great community there if you have questions or want to get involved, or you've got questions about game schooling. And like I said, has anybody played this game? Things like that. Great community there. So check that out, gameschooler.com/Discord. Please continue to spread the word about the podcast and leave a review on whatever platform you listen to. That helps us out immensely. And if you have questions, reach out to us. Email at gameschooler.com. Again, email at gameschooler.com. We would love to hear from you. Now, let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Champions by Repos Games. Doug, give us the stats.
All right. Published in 2023 by Repos Production. The designers are Frank Critton, Gregory Larget, and Sebastian Pochon. And that last name may be familiar to you because he is a designer of Jaipur, co-designer of Jamaica, and the designer of Skyrise, which we just talked about recently. Champions is for 3 to 8 players. Takes about 30 to 45 minutes. The box says 10 plus. Board Game Geek says 8 plus. And I think the 8 plus, as long as you can write, you're going to be okay. And maybe even not. And this is going to be a straight up family game and also would be classified as a party game. In each round, you try to predict which characters, ranging from public figures to fictional characters or even family members, will win their duels and which single character will end up the champion in the grand finale. More specifically, in each duel, you vote for the contestant you think will win, scoring points if you're correct. Put yourself in the shoes of the other players and anticipate their votes. Betting on the right champion will earn you a bonus. Then you head to the next round with a new batch of characters. So each, you're going to play this over 2 rounds. In each round, you're going to divide up the character tiles as evenly as possible amongst the players or teams. And there are 8 character tiles. You are going to write either a fictional character, a public figure, a historical character, family members on these little placards. Those placards are going to be shuffled and then put down to make a bracket. In between each set of contestants or challengers, you are going to put a duel card, and the duel card is going to have a contest. So, for example, one of them here is still swims with floaties. So you might be comparing Abraham Lincoln and Madonna and see which one of them you think still swims with floaties. And you're going to do that all the way down and before the game actually starts, you're going to look at the entire bracket, and you're going to pick who you think the champion of the whole thing is going to be, and you are going to write that down. Then you're going to go round by round or match by match and vote who everybody thinks is going to win that matchup, who's going to win the matchup of who still swims with floaties. The winner is going to move on to the next round. Anybody that correctly guessed or was in the winning team is going to get a point. And you're going to do that until the tournament is basically, or the bracket is complete. And if you happen to guess the champion correctly at the beginning of the round, you get bonus points. And you're going to do that 2 times through. Whoever has the most points at the end of that is going to win. What I like about this game is I think this is a perfect and a great mix between 2 games that we've already talked about for different reasons, and it works really well, and that is Green Team Wins and Hive Mind. So it has the element of the Green Team Wins of writing down and thinking and choosing which one's going to be the winner or which one the group is going to agree with, along with that hive mind of trying to figure out what everybody else is thinking as well, and kind of playing your own personal game of this is my opinion mixed with what's everybody else going to think. Am I in the minority in this one? Maybe I should vote with the other one, even though I don't think that. And that's what I really enjoy about this game. If you're looking at the run of Repos games, you've got Just One, which is awesome. We've talked about in the past. And then their next one was So Clover, which to me required a little bit too much thinking and thought processing time and having trouble getting on the same page. And then this one came out, and I think this one is kind of a return to form, even though it's completely gone under the radar, unnoticed, and by and large completely forgot about.
Yeah, and I will just say that I had a very hard time. Let me preface this. When I first play a game, I'm typically not reviewing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you are, Doug, but when I play a game, I'm not thinking, oh, this could be Game of the Week material. Not the first play. At least not until an hour after I'm done playing.
Yeah.
And in-action reflection of champions while playing it, that first game was, this fits everywhere for me.
Yeah.
This fits with my family. This fits with my game group. This fits in a board game club at a middle school after school program. This fits on our podcast. This fits everywhere. And when I looked it up on Board Game Geek and went to log my play and went to add it to a few lists, I couldn't believe how it was rated and how it was accepted by the hobby at large, right?
Yeah.
This is like our second lowest ranked game we've ever had as a game of the week.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a 5.9 on Board Game Geek. We're ranked 12,972, so halfway to life. And I don't know how it could be that big of a miss for that many people and that big of a hit for me.
Baffles
but it
me.
is.
Baffles me.
It really is. If you're looking at this is a 15, it takes what HiveMind does and it condenses it down into like 15 minutes. If we're playing HiveMind as a family, that's a 45-minute to 60-minute game to get all the way through that thing. And sometimes people will get tired, and sometimes people will get crabby. And what I like about Champions, it's really a 15 to 20-minute done.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's so bizarre to me because after I played it, I'm thinking, why didn't this get buzz? This is a straight up party game that I think is funny. The ridiculousness of the contest when who makes out of these two people, who makes homemade bread, who can fit 12 marshmallows in their mouth, and when you're looking at and the game comes with, I don't know, 6 or 7, 8 cards here, front and back sided of a whole bunch of historical, pop culture, fictional characters. So you don't,
and you can make up your own.
Yeah. So you don't, if you don't have to sit down at a table and be like, oh, I got it. Yeah, I saw a couple of reviews. It's like, well, whoever puts down the funniest thing is going to, win. And it's like, yeah, but you don't have to do that. And sometimes
you get a showdown. It's that showdown. That's the fun part. And so I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I know as soon as we air an episode, we have folks who will run to Board Game Geek, and I wanted to at least explain it on the front end of the segment. The other thing, though, I do think that these games play differently for different game groups.
Yeah.
I know I love Just One. I will play Just One all day long. My wife doesn't care for it a whole lot. My wife and my oldest daughter love So Clover. They love matching those cards together. For me, I love a bracket. I can't tell you. There is something, and it's part of it's the NCAA tournament. Part of it is just in coaching and playing basketball. I love looking at a bracket and thinking about possible matchups.
Yeah.
And Champions does that in a very funny way.
Yeah. Where
you don't have to have the funniest, but you can put the name of your local priest or religious leader in there and put the name of your uncle who tells the best stories, and then pick 2 that they give you, and you're off and running because I don't know who the other matchups are going to be or what they're competing for.
Yeah.
So if it's who's most likely to be a vegetarian, and I get Colonel Sanders in one end and Charles Barkley in another, it's just a bad example, but made it up on the fly. There's just a lot of really good questions.
Yeah.
That come in.
Yeah.
There.
When it comes down to who bakes bread, Dracula or Iron Man, and
that's tough.
That discussion.
That's tough.
And I was curious about this. I do wonder if, because I have a sentimentality of this game and making brackets and tournaments as a kid with my brothers. That is something that we did all the time, And so I do wonder if there is a male bias to this, that is more intriguing to them. My big caveat to this is, a while ago we changed our verbiage on this segment, and this is a try game. Try it out, because it may miss for you. It may be a go-to staple party game for you for the next 10 years. I think,
that you can try it at Amazon for under $10.
Yeah.
And folks will know I'm not one to push people to Amazon, but this was one that was like, hey, for $9.86, I already played Doug's copy. I already know that I love it. I don't care if it comes dented and smashed up and looks like the Amazon truck ran over it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you could quiver this one.
Yeah. That's what you got it, man. Yep.
The one thing I guess I would put out there, and this was, I did a similar thing to Michael. I went to Board Game Geek, and I was like, seriously, 5.9? And I started reading some of the reviews, and I did come across a thing that I think you need to be aware of. But I think this applies to a lot of games, and it almost frustrates me that this is still something that needs to be said. But people taking this game too seriously will make it not fun. And I guess if you're playing with folks that are coming to a game like this with knives out, ready to fight, taking this to a duel to the death, this is a serious game, I probably don't want to game with those people. Like, that's why would you ever go into a party game taking it too seriously? But the number of people that are like, if you're looking at this game and saying, well, there's not a lot of good decision making, or there's not a lot of this, okay, it's not designed to be that. This is not the newest Vital Lacerda Eagle Griffin game. It's
which you could send me a review copy of, by the way.
A 20-minute game, 30-minute game. It just baffles me every time I read stuff like that. But somebody like that could ruin the game.
They will ruin the game. But that's the thing that you got to understand what's in our library and what's in our personal collection. Okay, word games that play 3 to 8 players, games that are going to incorporate children at the same level as adults, games that make you laugh, games that make you laugh at your belly till that you almost fall over. Those are good games for both of us, and those are games that we're going to cover here. And we've done just one in the past as a game of the week. That thing has come up on multiple high fives. We've also done Similo. We've done Deducto. We've done some other silly games. And I think Champions is one of those that if you just want to laugh, if you want to let it rip, it's a great game. And I will say there's some skills in here.
Yeah.
Anytime you're thinking about how your creativity is in this game, you're having to create a character and put that character into a setting. What an awesome little skill for people to have. This is also a game that, we've talked about in-law proof in the past. This is teenager proof.
Yeah.
And I know we have some folks on our Discord that are like, oh, I've got a teenager, I've got a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, and I'm just losing them. They don't want to play games with me like they did when they were 8. Totally get it. This is a game that my 14-year-old laughed while playing.
Yeah.
And one that, I fits in across multiple different settings for us. So it might not fit in with some folks in the hobby. It certainly fits in for both Doug and I.
Yeah. The other skill that we haven't really talked a lot about in this podcast, even though it is on our list, and it is not a game. It's not a skill. It can happen during the game. I haven't had it happen during the game, but usually after voting occurs, and that's persuasion. There's a lot of, when you're on the losing end of a vote on which one of these characters is still baking bread, there's always an argument from the person that was on the outside pleading their case of why they think that should have been. And in some cases,
Doug's always going to choose Iron Man. I would go with President Lincoln, just for those who are keeping score.
It was
at home.
Dracula, and
Okay,
I would have picked Dracula. I think he's still making blood loaves. But there's also
persuasion. Sorry, I took you off
There's
track.
also the possibility of doing that in game, where you could have before a vote people fighting one way or the other. I don't know if that would throw the game off, but that little bit of jockeying of just like, well, of course it would be that. Well, why do you say that? That whole kind of discussion, but it certainly happens afterward. And the group discussion in this game, those things kind of go.
I had communication, but you've got group discussion, very similar. Communication is a core skill. It's in almost every game that we cover, but it's a game that fosters an environment in which players must share information, news, or ideas, and really how you share those ideas. And manipulating can have such a negative connotation. Doug talked about persuasion, but trying to get people to see who the more superior choice is in that duel, so you have almost a little bit of competitive communication.
Yeah.
And that's, to Doug's point earlier, boy, if somebody's hyper competitive, they could take this thing off the rails. You don't want the person who's going to be slapping the table. Well, obviously Dracula wouldn't be baking bread because he doesn't eat bread. You don't want that
flipping
person
the table,
getting hyper competitive, right? But that subtle communication, that little bit of back and forth, it's different than some of the other games that Repos has made.
Yeah.
It's different than just one where that's collaborative, right? And you're working to try to get those points. It's different than so Clover, where you're working to match. So yeah,
I guess the big takeaway for me is I feel like in an alternate universe, this game could have been the toast of the town, and everybody was talking about it. Like, I could see it completely going.
that bothers you a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, I'm just shocked by it because of
Yeah.
the way, and it does make me wonder of like, well, it just didn't catch on with one or two reviewers, and then it just got lost. Where it's like, if those one or two reviewers had championed it, it would, what would have happened to it? The way that games become industry darlings compared to other games, and what makes them work and not work. And this was the first game in a long time that I was like, I'm really surprised that this one is almost like my internal game meter was off. Where it's like, okay, I played just one. The first time I played just one, I got a demo of it before it ever came out, and I'm like, this is a hit. This is going to work really well. And
it was, and it did.
Yeah, and then So Clover came out, and when I got a chance to play it, I'm like, I can see why this maybe fell under the radar, or why this didn't perform as well as just one. It didn't have that instant, thing. And this,
Yeah, but not to get too benign here, but that game caught fire in the hobby. I mean, there are other podcasters and other channels that love So Clover and continue to talk about it.
yeah, I guess, and maybe I'm looking at it not necessarily, but I'm looking at it the lens of compared to just one. It's
Okay.
like not necessarily it was well regarded, but not as well regarded as Just One. Like Just One was clearly the superior one, and I could see why in comparing those two games. Same company, same kind of group of designers. It's like, oh, this is their next follow-up game, and it's like, all right, I can see why that didn't hit as well as Just One. This one came out, or when I played this one, and I just found it basically by accident. And then I looked it up. I'm like, how did I not hear about this? And then after,
How did you find it? Was it one of the few games on Amazon that you don't actually own?
no,
Is
I
that
was
how
in
you came-
I was in a local game store, local friendly game store, and I saw it, and I'm like, what is that game? And I picked it up and looked at it. I'm like, this is a Repos game. Did some more, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna file that away. And then I picked it up, and while I was playing it, I'm thinking, this seems like it has more broad appeal than So Clover. I know it's not going to be as big as Just One, but to me it falls.
It seems like a hit.
It seems
Yeah.
like a thing that I was just surprised by. I feel like this is a game that I could be taking to family holidays for the next 5 years, and everybody's going to want to play it and have a blast playing it.
Well, and I think you will. And I think that I will as well. And the other thing that I'll say to that, it's a game that a teenager can teach to their cousins, to their grandparents, to their family members, to their friends. And that is also becoming more of a rare thing. I feel like a lot of games have one or two exception rules, or even just one or two setup things that you have to understand. And the startup for Champions, you're handing out cards, you're teaching the game while you're setting up that first round. You tell them, we'll worry about points at the end of the first round. We're just going to get our matchup set, and you're off and running. And I think a lot of 12, 13, and certainly 14-year-olds are able to do that. And that's just another reason where it fits in so many different settings for us.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would change as far as just kind of putting this out there as teaching the game, the way that the rule book goes through it, you get this kind of card, and it has a bracket on the back side for you to fill out to then determine who your champion is going to be, who you think is going to win the whole tournament. And to me, that gets kind of confusing in explaining that half of this card is just a worksheet, essentially, the only one that you really care about. And I think going forward, I would say pick the person that you think is going to win the entire tournament, fill them in, and if you need to use this as a chart to keep track of it, use that, as opposed to telling people to fill out the whole bracket type of thing.
Sure.
because that's the only part that I've ever had an issue where people are like, what am I doing exactly? And it's like, no, just predict the winner. That's all you're doing on this card is predict the winner. Then we get into playing the game. And so if you are teaching the game, that is one kind of note that I would put out there. But other than that, the rules are flawless. It's fun. It's funny. And it's been a great experience every time I've played it. Anything else from you, Michael?
You got it.
All right, so that is our Game of the Week, Champions from Repos Production. Give it a try if you get the chance. Let's move on to the School of Gaming.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss staying in tune with casual gamers. Doug, who should take the lead into this? I'm ready, but if you want to take the lead, take the lead.
Go ahead. After that soulful intro, go ahead and take the lead.
Yeah. So casual gamers, and I'm not going to label or identify that. If Doug wants to, he can, but I would just say somebody probably with less than 50 to 100 games in their collection. Probably somebody who
maybe even
may
10.
not spend. Yeah, okay, and might not even be aware of Board Game Geek, but they'll play a game.
Yeah,
and they'll happily sit down and play a game with you. So how do you keep in touch with them? And I think my number one, and I have some casual gamers in my house. I feel like I'm married to one, and I think the number one suggestion, the thing that I have to do to keep in touch is one, let them call the game, let them play the games that they want to play, especially if they remember or recall a game that they really enjoy. And then two, ask about teaching new games. I think there's something that can happen very easily with casual gamers, and that's just getting to a state of overwhelm. Why would I need to try to learn a new game when I already know these dozen games that I like? Mm-hmm. And for some folks, 12 games is enough. Why do they need to learn a 13th game? So those were the two big things: is let the casual gamer call the shot, and then really, for me, and maybe this is just me in my house, I let people say no 10 times before they say yes once. An example of that is, Flamecraft, Game of the Week for us, coming up on almost 2 years ago. A game that I absolutely love, a game that I get to the table and play solo, but I haven't actually played it with my wife yet, just because she'd rather play Quacks.
Yeah.
She knows how to play Quacks of Quedlinburg. Why would she want to learn another game? And so, are those games similar? No, they have beautiful pieces, but you're doing very different things. And I think that that's okay. I don't know if you had a different way you wanted to take the segment, Doug, or if we need to reboot it. But.
No, definitely not that. I think that there's two different areas, both as a gamer and, in our case, a kind of a commentary on reviewers in general. And I think anytime you take a deep dive into a hobby, you can forget where the starting point is. And we talked about it a little bit last week when we were talking about basketball or learning instruments, but even something about, if you're a wine connoisseur, the difference in the knowledge gap between somebody that's been doing that for 5 years compared to this is their first wine tasting, or they've never picked up an instrument or a basketball before. And sometimes it's easy, as in our case, the gamer, to gloss over and forget about the amount of skills that we have learned from playing games, from learning games, and being in the hobby. And we take those skills for granted, knowing that my 12-year-old has a different gaming knowledge compared to other 12-year-olds and her friends.
Yeah.
Her level and skill level of what she's been exposed to and has played and experienced is very different. And I think there's a kind of a double-edged word of caution is don't be pretentious about it and looking too much down on casual gamers or scoffing at Life Junior, or that maybe somebody's favorite game is Life, or they grew up playing Monopoly and they love that. So don't be pretentious about it. The second part is try the best that you can, and you touched on it a little bit with the idea of saying, asking people and being okay with them saying no. But I think sometimes taking the skills that we have for granted, when we are introducing games to new players or non-gamers, we bring something home for a holiday, we completely, speaking from experience, and I think this is a general stereotype of the entire hobby, we overestimate the ability of the players around us and bring something home that is way too heavy for them to handle or more complicated than we should be, where maybe the games that you should be bringing home are those easy to access card games that are in a quiver, and you can bring 10 of them and you can learn them in 3 minutes. So as a gamer, I think
the difference, almost quiver got caught. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So just that from that point as a gamer, being aware of what you're introducing, and also not being pretentious. Take time to reflect and realize the amount of skills that you have as a gamer that other people don't, that may not even know that Board Game Geek exists. People can enjoy games and play games and not have to be, they don't have to know what Board Game Geek is. They don't have to be invested in the hobby. They don't have to, be keeping track of every new game that comes out.
Yeah, and I think, I saw some of that happen this past weekend where people in my wife's family are used to me having the big board games table bag. Right now it's all play, but you have the what Doug likes to call the calyx on your back and a bag that takes up the entire back seat of a sedan. People in my wife's family are used to seeing me bring that thing out at Christmas time and at family reunions. And so this past weekend, where it's like, well, where are the games? And I've got a quiver, and that's what I almost shut down the whole podcast because the quiver got caught on the table here. And I say, got a dozen games are in there. And the casual gamers in the room are like, what? That's cool. And so I think you talked about being pretentious, but being able to kind of teach and show folks other parts of the hobby. And at the same time, I completely overestimate the amount of content and games that I can get out to the casual gamer. Yeah. And I know that that's a flaw of mine. And I'm not saying that I'm getting better at it.
But you're not
basically,
alone.
No, I think that's a very common thing because it comes from a good place, and a place of, I love this hobby. This hobby's awesome. I want to share this with people, right? Same thing where if you're making food, I love this food. I made this food. I want to share this food with people. But there's only so much that you can take to a gathering. And it's that sense of, okay, so if the quiver is for the casual gamers, maybe the board game table bag is for the conventions. Just please don't swing your calyx around at me at Gen Con. I'd like to live to make it home.
I'm anticipating 3 or 4 concussions in the exhibit hall.
Hey, that was the most athletic move. Folks, I'm going to get a little tangent here, but the most athletic move I ever had in the last decade for me, I was like Neo in The Matrix was last year, with the guy swung around an entire game bag and I thought he was going to take me out. I just completely did the limbo and survived it. But that's a different setting, Doug.
Yeah.
Gen Con and your family reunion in July where it's a cookout. How do you make that connection with the casual gamers?
Well, and as far as a reviewer angle is that as well is, Michael and I had an experience where we went to Noble Night. We were teaching point salad, and we kind of made a point of like, let's ask everybody that comes up and gets a demo, like what they're playing and see what the kind of buzz was. Not a single one of them said a game that came out in the last 2 years before Point Salad.
Yep.
Nobody was playing anything modern. And like, what's the awesome game? What have you been playing? because we kind of wanted to see
A
what
lot of Arkham horror.
Yeah.
A lot of this, a lot of
we
that.
wanted to see what the buzz was, if there was a game that we were missing, and it's like, guys, that game came out 3 years ago. That came out 4 years ago. That's not new. That's so old, and it really was an eye opener, I think, for both of us, of just like, yeah, people aren't consuming stuff the way that we think they are, and that there's a whole other audience out there that is playing the game that they like, and then that's it. Like there's no desire to find 10 more games just like it, or a slight variation, or a new mechanism. And I think reviewers miss that, and they have a hard time taking themselves out of the situation and understanding how a game could be appealing to someone if it's not appealing to them. And I think they fail to take out the consideration of, you have 10 years of gaming experience.
Yeah.
You know, that's the equivalent. Is like, if I've never eaten at a 5-star Michelin restaurant before, and I've only eaten at McDonald's, why would how would I not know that there's anything better out there? I'm happy with my McDonald's, or whatever the case may be. And I think people have a hard time putting themselves back in those shoes. And unfortunately, kids games, party games, and lighter family games often just get dismissed by the hobby in general, because the folks that are reviewing them, I don't know if they're not able, or they just gloss over it because it's not at their skill level. And sometimes I think that's just not it's great if everybody that's watching you is of that skill level, but it really does a disservice to the amount of, when I walk through a Walmart or a Target and I see all the games that are sitting on the shelf, and it's like, yeah, they've got a lot of hobby games on there now, but there's a lot of other games that you and I would walk by and be like, ooh, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
It's like, but you know what? Millions of people are buying those games, or they wouldn't be on those shelves every year after year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to kind of dismiss that whole section of game players seems really bizarre to me, and something that I think we take a really, really big effort to try and stay true and honest to that type of stuff, that it's about the game playing and the quality time and the experience more than the game that's providing the lubrication for that, right?
Well, and oftentimes the casual gamer is only, 10 play sessions away from being a full-blown hobbyist.
Yeah.
And it's not that you have to, it's not my job to evangelize and to convert casual gamers deeper into the hobby, but it is my job to be the most welcoming and kind person at the table that I can be, so that casual gamer wants to play a game with me again.
Yeah.
And if I were to rewind and say that sentence to myself 7 or 8 years ago and play that back, be like, that's a fake. There's no way future Michael will ever say that statement.
Yeah.
But I think that's, for me, that's also how I need to stay true and be an ambassador for the hobby, and part of being the co-host of the Game Schooler podcast is that when I'm at the table, I need to make sure that everyone at the table feels welcome, safe, free to be exactly who they are, and engaged.
Yeah.
To the best that I can. And I think that that's where, even just if somebody knows a dozen titles, that they can still, have quite the gaming experience.
Yeah. Well, and if the idea is, gosh, I wish I had more people to play games with, being pretentious about it and introducing them to games that are beyond their skill level is a guaranteed way to get them not back to the table. They will not be coming back if you do.
Well, when those two things are combined, especially.
Yes.
Because if it's beyond their skill level, but if there's a level of kindness and recognition of, sorry, and
but both,
I got to,
both.
I got to give you and the folks in your game group when you welcome me in. I mean, I didn't know anything about advanced worker placement games, and the amount of times where I would ask clarifying questions, you guys didn't even know I was colorblind, and I would say, "Is this blue or is this purple?" And the amount of times that people would stop their turn and politely redirect me. I mean, that's how you take someone from being a casual gamer to having a house full of games.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Certainly both of them together are a kiss of death. Both of them on their own can also be just as hazardous. So, it is a group of, like Michael said, you've got casual gamers in your family. I have casual gamers in my immediate family. And instead of trying to be evangelists all the time, figuring out, well, how can we make this work with them and staying in tune with what they need and what they want out of the hobby compared to what we need and what we want out of the hobby, and being a little bit more selfless. So let us know, how you guys stay in tune on Discord, or email us with casual gamers and the non-gamers in your life, and how that works out for you. We'd love to hear about that. Let's move on to the high five. I think this is going to be an interesting one. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. This week, we are going to be talking about well-regarded misses, our high five well-regarded misses. So this is probably going to be the most negative that Michael and I have been about some of the most popular games out there. And also
authentic, though.
Yes.
Because we want to share, and there might be some crossover, but there might not. So you'll get to see why.
I think there's only... I think there may be one. I think there may be one crossover. And I put the essentially, my kind of blanket statement is I'm not really going to go into a whole bunch of detail of what I don't like outside of it. It just didn't work for me.
Hey man, you're stealing my line.
Oh, sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to say. No, that's real.
Right?
That's
it's
exactly,
like,
yeah.
This is, and we wanted to do this where, there are so many games that come out a year that Michael and I have consciously chosen to talk about the ones that we love. Why would we spend time talking about games that we don't really care for? We want to talk about the ones we love and share those with other people. But we do know that there are a whole bunch of games out there that other people love that for whatever reason just didn't work for us. And so this kind of gives us an opportunity to talk about some of those games, maybe why they didn't work for us a little bit, without being negative. This is it's not taking a game that is garbage and then we're just going to pile on top of it. These are awesome games that just don't work for us and either didn't stay in our collection or we didn't bring into our collection. And I think it will help to give our listeners some insights too into what does work for us. Yeah.
The only caveat I tried to stick within the last 10 years. I have one game that's an exception to that. But I wanted to kind of just keep it fairly recent.
Yeah.
Did you have any caveats?
No, I was I had some that I knew that were going to be on my list for sure, and then I kind of went to the Board Game Geek and went by ranking, and it was amazing the amount of games that are well regarded that I haven't played, and I also don't want to play, if that makes sense. Where I was going through and I'm like, I don't really have any interest, not in a negative way, but it's like I don't have interest in trying that game out. Like I've seen enough about it, or whether it's the complexity, the time, or whatever. And I was amazed by the number of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I agree with that. And it's like, never played it, don't have any desire to play it.
Interesting.
So, but all of these games I have played. So
same. Number 5, great game for most, incredible theme with incredible timing from an incredible publisher. I thought it would be perfect for me. It just didn't land, and that is Santorini. Santorini is a 2 to 4 player abstract game, which I had in my collection. I picked it up before ever actually playing it. It plays in about 20 minutes. It's got a theme. I was looking if it was Greek or Roman gods. I know I should know. I should have done research,
be Greek,
but
right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But a very, very simple theme where you move one of your buildings into a neighboring space, and then you build, and then if either of your builders reaches a third level, you win. Abstract game that a lot of abstract games work great for me and my family. Most recently, Boop, a 2-player kitty to cat placement game, which has worked great. And Santorini just didn't land. And I also had at the time when I was playing it and reviewing it for the show, my kid was on fire, and I mean like reading the Iliad on fire with the gods, the Greek gods, and so that one just didn't land for me, and I got it in a trade, and it has since gone out in a trade as well. So I'm hoping that it's working for whoever owns it now.
I played that one time with our buddy Dan, and if you don't know Dan, he's really smart, and he taught it to me, and I beat him, and then I never wanted to play it again. I was afraid. I was afraid.
you didn't think you could, Doug. That's terrible. That's terrible.
I do have.
Oh, crowning achievement. Retired. Drop the mic. Done. Won't play it again. You can take it home now.
I do have the New York version one. The only thing that kept me away from it is that it's a 2-player game that I would never get to the table in my house, and so I got the 4-player one. The New York one plays more players, so I thought that would have a better chance, but.
Well, and there are awesome powers in it. Like there's so many things where I could see like, man, this is an awesome game. This is an awesome game. And when I played it, it just didn't hit awesome. And it wasn't because what I'm really good at separating as a player is how other people feel about it. It wasn't just that my kiddo at the time, kiddos, I played it with multiple kids. It didn't work for them. It's that there was something about it like, yeah, I'm not seeing it, but I know. Like I said, Roxley is one of my all-time favorite publishers. Great designer there in Gord, and it's worked for a lot of other podcasters and reviewers and players as well. Just didn't hit for me.
Yeah, good choice there. My number 5 is one of the newer games, although the Board Game Geek would tell me differently. This one came out in 2022, and that's Wandering Towers. That's from Capstone Games, Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer, and this is my number 5 because I need to play it again because I'm not sure. I'm still not sure if this will be on my list or not. I don't know if I was one of those guys that went into it not too seriously, but expecting it to be a different game than it was. Maybe I went into it thinking that it was more of like a Ticket to Ride wait type thing, and I think it's much lighter and much more. Looser than that. But once I got done playing it, I was like, I don't know, but I'm still questioning myself. But for the time being, it's still a miss for me. For whatever reason, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get what all the buzz is about. It's almost the exact opposite of Champions for me, where I'm like, I don't get it in the opposite way. So that's my number 5, Wandering Towers.
Well, and you can always borrow my copy and play it with other people. Deep down, I feel like I may have ruined it for you because when we played that first game, I got after it.
Michael was the guy that took it too seriously.
I was not the most pleasant guy at the table. We were playing with a third friend, and he and I are hyper competitive whenever we play. And I love Wandering Towers. It worked really well for me, but I could totally see why it didn't for you. And that's like that offer's there, so don't feel like you have to run out and buy a copy. You can borrow it, and you can play it with your extended family and see if it works better. Moving on, number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4 is ranked 217 overall, and it is the 2021 Kennerspiel, and that is Paleo by Peter Rustmeyer, publishers Hans im Glück, and this. It was a game of the year. Okay, so obviously people love it. It's also number 52 in thematic on Board Game Geek and 164 in strategy. It's a cooperative game that just didn't click for me. I don't know how much of it had to do with the colors in the game. I don't know how much of it had to do with me just not picking up on the icons. And I don't know how much of it had to do that I was playing it at a convention.
Yeah.
So I was playing it in the midst of playing a slew of games.
Yeah.
So it could have been just like being at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and yeah, that might be the world's best fried chicken, but I've already had 4 other meats, so I can't really tell you if it's the world's best fried chicken. But Paleo was a game that just didn't land for me, and I was really excited to play it.
Yeah,
I was. And so that's my number 4.
Yeah,
Paleo.
That could have been on my list as well. I still go back to that experience and wonder how much like teaching and learning, and sometimes when you're at a convention, you're trying to Like, oh, that's one we've been meaning to play, or and you kind of are trying to seat of your pants it, which can be rough.
Yeah.
But certainly not enough there that neither of us thought, like, we need to give that another try. It was like, you know.
And I have enough cooperative games
Yeah.
that are in that, light hobby to hobby area, right? This is a Kennerspiel, so it's not going to be a family game.
Yeah.
Where I would get a Return to Dark Tower out. I would play a Disney animated. I would
Yeah.
play a Horrified. I'm kind of picky on my cooperatives that way. There are things that I want to be able to do in the game, and in that one, I just felt like I was restricted.
Yeah. All right. Well, my number 4, Michael may think it's his fault, but it's not. I can assure him. And it just made me actually think of, not thinking about Michael's teaching, but it did make me think of another game that should be on my list that I threw in the honorable mentions now. But that is, this is ranked number 124 on Board Game Geek, and that's Darwin's Journey. This came out in 2023, Thunderglyph Games.
I love that
Simone
game.
Luciani and Nestori Mangione. Too heavy, and for me, too many disjointed, unthematic elements where there was too many things going on in different areas that I could not thematically connect in my brain, which made them really hard for me to learn and care about what I was doing. So it all kind of seemed random to me. And trying to think of some of the other games that Simone Luciani has done, I feel like there's a tendency for some of his games to fall in that category for me. So that's where it lands. It's not necessarily. I imagine it's a very difficult game to teach, because there's a lot of stuff going on. But for whatever reason, I could not get the things to click together. So like Voyages of Marco Polo works for me. I don't know why. I don't know why some of them do and some of them don't. But I do have, like, I at one point had Lorenzo Il Magnifico in my collection, and I read the rules several times, and it's just like, I feel like I have to read and restudy every time I learn the game or want to play.
Yeah.
I have Newton in my collection, but I know I'd have to do that again. Council of Four, I've read the rules for that 3 or 4 different times, and it's like one of those things where I feel like you need to just play that a lot till you get over that hurdle and know how everything works. And I just don't have the time or the patience to do that. So that's not my number 4, Darwin's Journey.
No, sorry to jump in on your list, Doug, but that was also a really good teaching and learning moment for me where it's, whoa, I might know a game really well solo, and I could play that inside and out by myself. But if I'm playing with other people, that's different. And so I feel like that debacle, but it really helped me for future hobby games, teaching future hobby games and putting just as much time into prepping to play the game with other people as I do when I'm playing the game individually. Yeah. All right. And a game that I love, and I'm getting ready to get another solo adventure of that going here in the next few weeks. Number 3 for me, we might have crossover.
Okay.
So if we do, just throw a finger in the air so I know. But it's currently ranked 206 overall on Board Game Geek. I'm not seeing any connection from Doug, and that is Meadow. Meadow is a game that I was definitely still in my new gamer enthusiasm. I've got way too many. I got Tabzilla going here. There we go. Got to it. Sorry. Meadow was released in 2021. It must have been the early part of that year. It was from Clemens Kaliki, same designer who did a game called Dream Home, I believe. The game that was a game of the week for us that absolutely my family loves and plays all the time to this day. And for whatever reason, and this is a game that's, listen to these ratings on Board Game Geek, 206 overall, 7.7 rating. Folks, if anything is higher than a 7.5, it's probably won some awards. and it just did not work for me. It was 2021 Golden Geek Medium Game of the Year nominee. Beautiful art. The production quality is fantastic, but in terms of the gameplay, with just unlocking how the set collection worked, my brain didn't figure it out like I do with other set collection games that involved drafting. So, like I said, it had everything that I thought that I would love about it, and for whatever reason, it didn't. It came and went out of my collection. It's number 27 overall in the Board Game Geek family category. So that's my number three is Meadow. And I don't want to get negative on it. I'm just saying it just didn't work for me. I wish it did.
Yeah.
I love set collection. I love open drafting. I like pretty art. And I'm a big fan of Rebel Studios. In fact, on my want to play shelf, I have the Chronicles of Avel behind me from Rebel Studios, one that I'm hoping to get to the table with my kiddos here. So that one just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it was on my honorable mentions. I did have that listed, and it was one that, like you said, it based on the designer and the studio, there was excitement for it. It seemed to be well loved by reviewers, and it just seemed kind of bland for me. Just there's not
wasn't
enough,
a lot of fun in there.
Not enough excitement. My number three is kind of an oddball choice for me because it is a game that I enjoy. I think I like it. But the thing about it is that it is so specific that is why it doesn't work for me. And that is, it's ranked number 74 on BGG, and that is The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9, which came out in 2019 by Cosmos and designer Thomas Singh. I like the concept of this game, a cooperative trick-taking game. But the teaching hurdle to get this to the table and out, and when I have a house with non-gamers in it, I can't play it with them. I then have to play with gamers, and a lot of gamers don't know how to play trick-taking games. So not only are you teaching somebody how to play a trick-taking game in the first place, and we're from the Midwest, so we grew up on trick-taking games, so we know
euchre or sheep's head. That's the opening. That's the opening question.
We know that concept right off the gate. So not only do I have to teach trick-taking, then I also need to teach them a component of strategy that requires that you don't get unless you play a bunch of trick-taking games, is how you can actually manipulate your hand. And in fact, Dan, who I mentioned earlier in the episode, brilliant guy, we have played trick-taking games, and it does not click for him. And there's something where it's like, I just don't see where the strategy is, or where I do, or how that he feels like it's just playing cards out of your hand. Yeah. And Michael and I are like, no, there's
partner communication.
There are certain things that you can do to manipulate the hands when you play something, when you don't play something. And for me, The Crew gets into that level right out of the gate. And that is a very hard thing to teach. And because it's so hard to teach, I can't get it to the table.
Yeah, can I jump in a little bit here too about what the game does? You have these different missions that you have to succeed on, and you can't talk, right? So the only communication that you can give is by this little chip token, and where you put that chip token on the table or on the card to let people know how you can contribute to the mission. So you all that to say, you really need the right group for this game to work.
Yeah.
I have both versions in my collection. I will keep both versions in my collection just in case that right group ever comes along. My family hates the game. The game doesn't work for Doug. So it's one of those where it's like, this is a game it won a bunch of awards, but boy, do you need the right group. Don't you think? Because you're combining so many different.
I think it's really hard to get to the table unless you have a consistent group. Like if my dad and brothers, where we play a lot of euchre, if they were gamers and I could get them to the table and it was like that became our thing, okay, that would be great. But that's not going to happen. So
too big ifs.
And the fact that it's like a campaign style game, and there's different missions and increasing difficulty, you got to have a good group of consistent players that all know everything going out of the gate. And it's like,
And you need the right player too, right?
Yeah.
So this could work really well for couples or spouses if they have that right. But it likely won't. Oh, well, I shouldn't say it likely won't. It hasn't for
so
me yet.
it's kind of an oddball that I think it is a good game, but the scenario in which it works is so small that it's a miss for me. I kept looking at it like, oh, maybe I can play this with my brother-in-laws, and then you try it and it's like it doesn't quite work, and then like I don't really.
Did you ever own it at any point?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's my number 3, The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9.
Awesome. Number 2 for me. Folks, this was a game of the week all the way back in January of 2022 in episode 54. And not only was it a game of the week, but we were right because in 2022, it was the Spiel des Jahres winner, and that's Cascadia. It's currently ranked number 45.
So this is more of a cool-off then, right?
No, it's never worked for me. It's
Okay.
that other people love it so much, I'll play it.
Yeah.
It's my wife and my kids, especially my oldest, love Cascadia. And in Cascadia, you are drafting a tile and placing that tile, and then you're getting a little animal token to get it, and then you're matching sets together. For me, where I think part of the reason why it doesn't work is just the colors. I think this is a game where my color blindness requires me to do just one step too many, and I can't get into the set collection and tile placement. It's one that I'll play. I will. But I actually had this heading out the door to Noble Night, and it got pulled back by family. And they're like, if there are any, what do you call it, expansions? Yes, if there are expansions, get them. We love this game. How dare you try to take this out of our house? I was like, oh okay. Do you want me to check with all games before I take them to trade them in, get a little store credit? How's this going to work? I was so surprised at the vitriol from
How dare you.
I was ganged up on. Yeah. Really good game. Just not one where if I was ever generating a top 100 or even probably a top 200 or 300, it would hit that. I'd probably have to be in like the top 200 or 300 before it hit my list. Again, one I'll play. It's not one where I'm going to say, no, I won't play that. But for me, it's one where I'm just not having as much fun at the table as a lot of other people. And at the same time, I can see why it hits.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. My number 2 is the only one that I could foresee being a crossover, and I'm curious if it is your number 1. I'm not sure, but it is ranked 190 on BGG right now, and that is Earth, published in 2023 from Inside Up Games and Maxime Tardif. It was a darling, a reviewer's darling, and let me just see, because I'm sure that won a bunch of awards.
it did. No, I enjoy that one.
What did it win here? Golden Geek Medium Game of the Year, Best Solo Game nominee, multiplayer, just a bunch of Meeple's Choice Award, the UK Games Expo Best Board Game, Euro style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just, this was a big one where, for me, there was not enough interaction going on at the table that I felt like I might as well be playing this on an app. And that's no fault of the game. And it was one where it was kind of the first of a trend where I started noticing a bunch of these games kind of coming out and becoming very popular. And for me, I think it comes down to that's not why I'm sitting at the table. I think this is the casualty of that. I'm sitting at a table because I want to engage, communicate, and kind of not just be heads down the whole time. And the level of interaction in this game is that somebody picks an action and people can follow, right? But there's no real fighting over other stuff, and I just kind of felt like I'm sitting here playing my own game. And the gameplay, again, this was the the start, or certainly in the middle of the nature. Like Meadow came out, and
I
then
think this
Earth
is
came out.
towards the back end of the nature.
And so it's like,
I hope
the nature theme was becoming old to me. The lack of interaction was not appealing to me, and so it just. And the other thing too is thing I don't like about some games, and Michael knows this for sure, and I think I've talked about it in the past, is I don't like games where there's 8 million combos going on between each turn. And everybody's like, well, I do this to this to this to this to this to this. Now I got to go back and remember this and do that and that and that. But then I get this bonus over here, and it starts. And it's like, it's great if you're the one taking that bonus turn. But if you're not, you're sitting there waiting. And there's so much.
I'm going to take it one step further, Doug. I think you mistrust that sometimes. It's not just that you don't like it. I think
both.
Sometimes you're sitting there like, oh, great, you just got 72 points, and I will get this piece of dirt.
I'm sure there, but because I can barely keep track of it.
Right.
Sometimes
right,
where it's
right.
like, okay, I'm going to put my finger here to remember that I still have this bonus. I'm going to count with these 3 fingers over here to track those, and then I get lost in it. And it's like, if I'm getting lost in it, and usually when we're playing, it's after a full day of work, and I'm fried, and I'm like, is everybody else picking this up at the same rate that I am? And so it just missed for me that kind of combo task. I think we played this a little bit after Furnace, which has a similar type of combo thing. So just didn't work for me, and that is Earth.
Yeah, interesting. And that's one that I love to play solo. You know, it's not in my collection currently, but I have to make a decision because the Pledge Manager is open on Kickstarter. So
I got a copy for you.
Okay.
No reason to pledge. I have one sitting over here.
Number 1 for me, I'm not trying to hurt Doug's feelings. At one point in time, I really liked this game. I had it. It's currently ranked 93 overall. On Board Game Geek. That's overall, folks, from all the games ever. It did win. It was recommended for Spiel. It was 17th ranked overall in the family category, and it was a game of the week back in episode 28, and that's Seven Wonders. I'm just not very good at it, and I play with people who are great at it, and it's not that they ruin the game for me. It's that I ruin the game for myself. I've played this game, I think, more at 3-player than anything else, and I feel like I only have bad choices. Like, okay, I can give the person to my left science, or I can give the person to my right military. I don't want to do either. And so part of it is...
that's because you're too focused on hate drafting.
No, well, that could be.
Take what's good for you, Michael.
But even when I do that, I end up with like 14 points, and then you guys are doing the combos at the end. And part of it... Not knowing the score in that game absolutely destroys me. Not knowing, and look, especially the second edition is beautiful. And Doug's got it all in those nice folded spaces, trays. It comes out. It looks great on the table. I'll play it, you know, especially if it's one of my best friend's favorite games. I'll play it. But it's for me, it's just become a miss, and I've tried multiple times. The other thing that I'll say about this, okay, if I'm just being honest, and it's my list, I have Seven Wonders Architects behind me, and I love that game. And so I don't ever see myself owning the base game of Seven Wonders.
Well, that's because that one's a race,
I like it.
right? That one, Seven Wonders Architects, is a race, and you love racing games.
There's some truth to that, but there's some big time truth to that. The other thing, though, is just I think playing with gamers who know that game so much better than I do, and not knowing the score, I feel like I'm beat before I even start, and I very rarely ever feel that in a game. In any part of life, I always feel like, oh, I can compete, I have a chance. But in that draft and pass game, it's like, oh, gosh. Oh, I see what I did. Oh, I shouldn't have given you that. Oh, I gave you that. Oh, I'm terrible. So that's my number 1. Well-regarded. Clearly a well-regarded. But for me, on my list, it's a miss.
Yeah. That's it's funny that you mentioned about the scoring, because it's one of the things that I actually love about it is that I don't have to pay attention. And I just play the game. And however it comes out at the end is fine.
Well, maybe that's the mindset I need to play. So like I said,
Yeah.
before 2024 is out, I'm willing to play it again with you.
again.
Get one of those beautiful. I like that Armada expansion.
Yeah, I think
You know, but I think that's part of it. It's like, well, if I'm going to get the game, I need to go $150 in to get the nice folded space in the expansions. I'll just pass. You know what I mean? So it's a weird gamer thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, well, we'll give it a try again. I'll keep cramming it down your throat. Have we? Never mind. My number one is number 38 on BGG, and that is Viticulture. The original came out in 2013. The Essential Edition is sometime after that. I played the Essential Edition, but I wanted to give the original the nod. That's from Stonemaier Games, designers Jamie Stegmaier and Alan Stone. And by all accounts, this should be a game that I like. It is very thematic. It is a Euro game it's a Euro game that is thematic, that makes sense while you're teaching it, and all of those type of things. For me, it went too long, and I got bored with it. I never felt like it felt somewhat monotonous, that I was doing the same stuff over and over again. And it was one of those, and I rarely have that where I'm playing a game and I'm like keenly aware of like, this seems like it's taking a long time and I want to move on. And I can play a 3-hour game and not feel that at all. And this is one of the few games that I felt that. And it says 90 minutes on the box, 45 to 90 minutes, but I think it goes longer than that. And certainly it may have been, first-time gamers, things like that, but it just didn't captivate me enough. And so that is my number one, Viticulture.
Interesting. You have some honorable mention?
I do. I have Agricola, Clans of Caledonia. Both have similar type of things. You already mentioned Meadow. And the one that I thought about earlier in the day but forgot to put on my list, which you reminded me of, Darwin's Journey, and that is Endless Winter. And I put those two together where it's like there's just too much going on. I like a lot of the stuff that you're doing in the game. And the same could probably be said for some of the stuff in Darwin's Journey. I don't have a problem with any of the, there are some cool mechanisms and things that I like doing. However, there's just too many of them, and it divides my focus up too much.
And I think that's really interesting because I loved Endless Winter, the play of it, and I clearly love Darwin's Journey. I've got it all, and I'll keep it all. But that same thing that you had told me about Seven Wonders, just play your game. Like with some of those games, it's like I think a common theme for both of us where some of these games don't fit, it's the focus, right? That there's just something about the focus of the game pulls us in a direction that doesn't seem to work for us. Like if I'm psychoanalyzing this segment here, you know what I mean? And I just think that's interesting that some of those design choices clearly pull other gamers, right?
Yeah.
Like I enjoy a lot of the games that are on your list. You clearly enjoy some of the games that are on my list. Interesting.
All right. Any honorable mentions for you?
No, I just brought 5 to the party today.
All right. Well, a reminder to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. You'll get notified every Friday when a new episode comes out. Follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Check us out on YouTube. There's more videos coming out all the time. And join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we are going to be talking about Captain Flip. We are going to be talking about scheduling a game night. And we're going to talk about co-host Gen Con predictions. So the games that we think that the other person is most interested in.
We're going with that list?
Yeah.
That list made the cut. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now get out there and keep gaming.